Loud music vibrated through the tightly packed hall, and the smell of delicious, mouth-watering party jollof rice saturated the air. Yet, throughout her elaborate wedding ceremony, Abena was disgruntled, refusing to taste any food, greet her guests, or even wear a smile to conceal her sad predicament. Her husband, Bright, on the other hand, was totally unperturbed about her appearance and never bothered to ask. The wedding ended, guests retired to their homes, and Abena followed Bright back to his mansion in the city. Although the comfortable leather seat of Bright's luxurious ride massaged her beautiful skin, it didn't make her feel any better. Neither did it shorten the trip or make the journey less stressful. As the car transported Abena and her husband to another side of life in the city, her heart panicked out of uncertainty. Finally, at the brink of the chill, drizzly night, their car coasted gently into a beautiful compound. Bright's mansion, grandiosely sitting in the middle of the spacious compound, laced with luminary lights filtering through every corner, the type of beautiful house she only saw in movies. Everything looked bigger and more elaborate. The scent of the exotic flowers adorning his compound filtered through the chilling night, and Abena couldn't fix her gaze on one thing as she paced around in amazement. Bright is truly a rich man, Abena murmured as they moved their belongings into the house. Here is your room, Bright pointed to the guest room. You'll be sleeping here from now henceforth. Abena looked at her husband in surprise as she tried to wrap her head around what he just said. You can drop your belongings and go prepare my dinner, Bright interrupted. But we just traveled a long distance, and I'm tired and worn out from the wedding ceremony. Can we manage leftovers from our wedding party? And I promise to prepare breakfast first thing in the morning. Before Abena could conclude her sentence, she received a resounding slap that sent her into temporary unconsciousness. I heard you're very stubborn, and my duty as your husband is to bend your wings. I've ignored and stomached your excesses throughout the wedding ceremony, and I will not tolerate any iota of disrespect from you henceforth. You must be submissive and only do as I say, and speak only when spoken to, Bright shouted. Abena's entire existence played like a movie before her. Abena, a young illiterate girl, was the first among 5 children born into the ruthless embrace of poverty and penury. Her mother, Edina, was a well of misguided hope, always lording things over everyone, including their father, Thomas. Abena was such a brilliant young girl, with dreams and ambition that soared as high as the heavens. Her beauty was undiluted, as pure as unrefined honey. Her smile evoked curiosity in the minds of all that beheld her. Abena's parents were so poor that they could barely feed, let alone train their children in school. It was Abena's resilience and quest for education that made her hawk. She hawked granules and every other thing that was in season in the dirty slums of Malabo to sustain herself through school and to support her parents. It was on one hot, blazing afternoon during one of her hawking trips that she crossed paths with Bright, a wealthy middle-aged man, in a flashy car. Why is a beautiful damsel hawking under the scorching sun? Bright asked as he slowly pulled over by the corner. Abena smiled softly, revealing her perfect dentation. I would like to buy all your granules. Everything? Abena asked. Be sure. Till the very last nut, Bright responded. Abena leapt in excitement. She had only heard of strangers buying in hawkers' daily wares, but had never experienced it herself. Without hesitation, Abena emptied her tray and handed it over to the rich man and ran home excitedly. Mama, you won't believe what happened today. Abena narrated the entire incident to her mother Edina. A few days later, the same flashy car drove into their compound. Abena and her family peeped through the window, wondering who the August visitor was. Bright majestically alighted from the car, carrying gifts in both hands. He walked into their home, informed Abena's parents of his intention of marrying Abena as soon as possible, Edna smiled from molar to molar, like someone that had just won the lottery. She assured Bright that he had come to the right place and would not be disappointed. I am barely 16, Mama. I can't get married yet until I have completed my education at least, Abena cried. Moreover, we can't continue in this vicious cycle. Look at how poor and wretched our family is. Neither you nor Papa were educated, and you want us to repeat the cycle again? Will you shut up, silly girl? What do you know? Edna scolded, with a stern frown on her face. Do you know how rich that young man is? God has finally buttered our bread with someone willing to deliver our family from the shackles of poverty, and you want to be the hindrance? Edna thundered. Abena, consider yourself disowned if you reject Bright's offer, and that is final. Moreover, Bright has promised to see you through school, to the highest level you want. Abena wept profusely as she saw her entire dream crumble before her eyes. Her wedding preparation was swiftly handled by her mother Edna, and Bright kept pumping money in. Edna made sure she rubbed it in the face of everyone she knew, and all her friends were invited to the wedding party. She bragged to her neighbors that her daughter was marrying a very wealthy man, and their level had changed automatically. Abena's wedding was quite extravagant, and all the young girls envied her and her family's newfound fortune. However, Abena was so certain she was making a wrong move, and her guts were right. Ever since she arrived at Bright's mansion, it had been one strange discovery after another. She lived like a stranger in her husband's house. As the days passed by, she grew leaner and leaner. Her daily routine was as tedious as that of a slave. She mopped the entire mansion with her bare hands, ran errands alone, and prepared fresh meals for her husband twice daily. I knew something was off ever since I met Bright. From the day I arrived at his house, I have been treated like a slave. He only treats me nicely when he wants to make out at night. I have not even permitted into the master's bedroom, except to clean. Furthering my education is now a mirage. I wish Mama was here to see the hot mess she has plunged me into. Abena soliloquized, with her mind lost in wonders. Bright's distinctly loud car horn jacked Abena back to reality. She hurriedly got up and ran towards the kitchen to tidy up her chores, only to twist her ankle and fall from the stairs with a loud bang on the floor. As the distinct smell of hospital drugs, accompanied by the beeping of monitors, filtered through the room, Abena opened her eyes to a strange surrounding. She was in the hospital bed, with a cannula fixed to her wrist, and the last thing she could remember was falling down the staircase. She faintly sighted Bright impatiently pacing around the corner of the ward, and she was wondering what was going on. A doctor in a white scrub gently walked into the room with a white envelope and handed it over to Bright. Bright impatiently tore the envelope and read through the content of the test results. "She is 5 months pregnant," Bright screamed, with his eyes wide open. "Yes, and she fainted due to extreme fatigue and stress. You must ensure she gets enough rest and eats well because the next time might be fatal," the doctor replied. Bright jumped in excitement, something Abena had never witnessed. He walked towards her and gave her a kiss on her forehead. Bright's disposition towards Abena changed since the news of her pregnancy. That same week, he hired a cook and a cleaner to relieve her from her chores. Abena observed all this in awe, as her once harsh and unapproachable husband began to speak and treat her softly. He even went the extra mile to shop for new beautiful clothes, hair and footwear for her. He even dropped and picked her up from her antenatal appointments. Abena became the envy of other pregnant women at the hospital. All these made her overjoyed. "Maybe the good Lord has answered my prayers, and though my husband's heart are round," Abena muttered to herself. As the day of the delivery drew near, a room in the mansion was lavishly furnished. to serve as the baby nursery, and it was nothing like what Abena had ever seen before. The room was painted with very bright colors and furnished beautifully. As Abena's belly swelled with the weight of her unborn child, her husband's affection continued to wax stronger. On the long-awaited day of delivery, for the first time, Abena was informed that she was having triplets. She was advised to birth them through a cesarean section to preserve her life and that of the babies. However, her husband Bright objected to that and insisted that she must deliver vaginally. This was a battle of life and death for Abena, as she labored tirelessly for hours on ending. At the brink of hope, Bright finally consented for her to undergo a cesarean section. However, at this time it was already too late, and Abena's womb was permanently damaged. Her triplet boys were healthy, and that was all that mattered to Bright. Throughout Abena's recovery, she was treated like a deadly plague by her husband Bright. All you know how to do is eat and grow fat. Ordinary to push out my lovely children, you couldn't. After all I spent on you during your pregnancy. Bright throwed Abena at every slight opportunity. At this time, Abena's killer body had tripled from childbirth and breastfeeding. It was impossible for her to breastfeed, care for the triplets, and care for herself. Her weight had tripled by then. Her condition kept deteriorating by the day. As her boys grew older, Abena did her best to give them maximum care and attention, relegating herself to the background. At the children's school, teachers and parents mistook Abena for the boys' nanny due to her poor appearance. Abena returned home one morning from school drop-off to meet her husband in bed with his personal assistant Kate. He was almost indifferent about the entire situation, except for the shock of seeing Kate, a whole Kate. Kate was bright, elegant, polished personal assistant that Abena always looked up to. An independent working-class lady who sustained herself without the help of any man. The last time Kate was at the house, Abena welcomed her so warmly and even prepared her food to eat. They discussed briefly, and she seemed like a very nice, respectable lady. Abena was disappointed to see her role model in bed with her own husband Bright. Her husband, on the other hand, was so bothered about his escapade. As time went on, having extramarital affairs with women became a norm, and Abena dared not to question Bright. She overheard him severally on the phone with his numerous side chicks, and he did all this unashamedly. Abena gradually fell into depression, and her only companion and source of happiness was food and her boys. She would eat herself to sleep each time. She got frustrated. As they say, time flies so fast, and before you know it, her boys were all in boarding school. The house was lonely and quiet once again. Abena spent her time reflecting on all that had happened to her, and how her once beautiful dream was burnt to ashes by her mother Edina. By now, I would have been a chartered accountant or even a lawyer. Instead, I am here in this prison, languishing. As she reminisced over all this, her eyes caught up with a church flyer lying on one corner of the table. She remembered the beautiful young girl that handed it over to her in the market the other day. The pretty girl reminds me of myself in my younger days. Abena sighed as she absent-mindedly scanned through the content of the flyer. Oh, they have a midweek service today. Since I'm less busy, I can go and make myself engaged rather than languishing in this house doing nothing. That evening at church, Abena sighted the same pretty girl who gave her the flyer and started to say hi after church. After a brief introduction, Grace told Abena that she was a final year student of law at the State Open University. That struck a chord in Abena's spirit. You mean you attend school from the comfort of your home? Just with your computer? Abena was flabbergasted. She exchanged contacts with Grace and told her of her lifelong dream of becoming an accountant. Abena returned home that cold rainy evening, feeling so happy and fulfilled about her latest discovery. She ran straight to her son's room and tried to start up their computer. She was overjoyed to see that it could work. However, she didn't know how to operate it. Abena invited Grace over to the house when her husband was away, and Grace helped her put her through the system and registration into the State Open University to study accountancy. Abena spent all her spare time studying, something she found very interesting. Grace became her closest friend as she visited the house severally to help her work with her studies. Sometime down the line, Abena started falling sick frequently. She had treated herself repeatedly, yet there was no improvement. It was so terrible that she had to pause her schooling. After several failed attempts at self-medication and constant weight loss, Abena managed to go to the hospital with the help of Grace. Abena's test results came back, and it was the most devastating news she had ever received in her entire life. It seemed like the end of the road for her. Abena was HIV positive. She knew that the only possible source of her illness was the man she married. However, amidst the bad news, something was quite puzzling to her. She was dumbfounded at Grace's reaction to the news. The way Grace wept and quivered uncontrollably was worrisome. Why is she crying more than the bereaved? Abena wondered. She dismissed it lightly and decided to focus on forging ahead. Abena was unsure of how long she had been infected or to what extent her system was damaged. She was filled with rage to think that the world's acclaimed Messiah, who was supposed to turn her family's life around, turned out to be a demon in disguise, ruining every bit of her life, little by little. Abena mustered the courage to confront Bright for the very first time, and he didn't deny the allegations. I feed you, I feed your entire family, I sponsor all your siblings in school, and I put a luxurious roof over your head. The least you should do is be grateful and take your drugs judiciously, Bryce replied. Bryce's response were barbed, piercing her heart the more. This was the hardest Abena had ever been through. She managed to pick up what was left of the pieces of her life, and she moved on. Her dear friend Grace suddenly vanished from the surface of the earth and was nowhere to be found. Abena called severally, and her lines were unreachable. She even stopped attending church. All these were strange to Abena. She was lonely and deserted once again. One early morning, 2 years down the line, Abena received a mind-wrenching call from an unknown number. The voice on the other side of the line was quite familiar, but faint. This is Grace. I promised myself I'll make this call before I take my last breath. Abena, my friend, please find a place in your heart to forgive me. During my regular visits at your house, I met your husband Bright, and at the point we went to the hospital to get you tested, I was already having a serious affair with him. He lured me and promised me that he was going to marry me, and we are already making arrangements for a traditional marriage behind your back. I was blinded. I was truly blinded by his wealth, and I did not know what I was doing. It was on the day of your test that I discovered that I was also HIV positive. I realized that I have been fooled all this while. My life was turned upside down, and I haven't been able to survive this illness. But most importantly, I have been dragged down by guilt. I have just a few days to live, and I want you to forgive me from the depth of your heart. My dear friend Abena, I'm so sorry. The call ended, and Abena couldn't believe her ears. She stared at her phone severally to be sure she wasn't dreaming. She couldn't believe the level of betrayal from her friend and her husband. The call was traumatizing, and it took her a while to recover. Abena's entire horrible life experience fueled her zeal to become successful. She completed her accounting course and graduated with flying colors. Although the oldest in her class, she emerged the best. Gradually, she started working for small businesses, managing their accounts from time to time. Abena gave in her all, and gradually, bigger companies began to seek her services. Most of this she did from the comfort of their home. Abena gradually began to build wealth from her savings and investments. Her closest companion and friend throughout all of this were her children, who were aware of all she had passed through with her husband, their father. One calm New Year's Eve, as a strong Harmattan breeze chilled the entire house, Abena was shocked to hear her husband sob from his room. Lately, he had been home a lot, and this was quite unusual, as he was always busy and on the move. It had different court visits, and different lawyers flocked their house. She also observed that he was constantly shouting over the phone with some of his business partners. Abena started to pay attention to all that was going on, and it was obvious that Bright was implicated in a fraud case that made him hit rock bottom. That same week, they were given a quit notice by the bank to vacate the mansion because the house was listed as one of the properties for collateral. Bright couldn't hide his brokenness anymore. He suddenly became humble and soft-spoken. He informed Abena that his personal assistant and mistress, Kate, set him up in a fraud case against his business associates after she found out that he had infected her with HIV. As Bright narrated his audio, Abena looked at her once high and mighty, unapproachable husband Bright, speaking like a helpless puppy. All she felt inside was disdain. Deep inside, Abena couldn't feel an iota of pity for Bright. Her heart had been seared beyond repair. Abena and Bright moved from their mansion to a boys' quarter in the suburban area of the town. Abena worked relentlessly to sustain her family, while Bright languished in regrets. She didn't stop improving herself. One day, she was recommended to work for a multinational company because of her tactfulness and excellent work output. The once neglected housewife Abena started earning in 7 figures, and things turned around for her sharply. No one could recognize Abena anymore, as she became a billionaire. Abena moved her family into a bigger mansion, and she drove the car of her choice, traveling from meeting to meeting. Her husband Bright couldn't believe his eyes. He still tried to keep up with his friends, pretending that he was the one pulling the strings. However, Abena refused to be used the second time. She simply informed Bright that she wouldn't give him a dime he didn't work for. After all, she now feeds him, clothes him, roofs him, and cares for both families. Bright's frustration grew by the day, and he couldn't stand being penniless. Hence, he agreed to serve as a domestic maid and a driver in his home to earn monthly. He drove his wife Abena from meeting to meeting, and no one could recognize him anymore. Throughout this period, Bright's jealousy grew stronger by the day. One Sunday afternoon, as Abena relaxed in her lush garden, sipping champagne and discussing with her sons, she received an email that shook her to the core. She cried tears of joy. She had been recognized and awarded for her outstanding hard work and performance, and she was being promoted to the level of a manager in the international firm where she worked. She was to receive her award as a lavish dinner later that same week. Abena was quite overwhelmed. Her once lost dream of becoming an outstanding accountant was already a reality. Abena prepared for the event, and on the day of the event, her husband, Bright, drove her to the location, while her eldest twin son walked her to the stage to receive her award. With tears in her eyes, she gave a brief speech, using her life story as an example to encourage all never to give up on their dreams. Bright listened to all this from the far back of the hall, and he was filled with regrets and rage. Abena was indeed the star of the day, as she received unending accolades. Although High and Mighty wanted to have a word with her, that day was such a day to remember. As Abena was fast asleep after the hectic occasion, she was swiftly awoken by hot flames of fire ravaging her multi-million mansion. Abena barely managed to escape the inferno with a third-degree burn, and upon investigation, Bright was apprehended as the culprit, and he was charged to 30 years imprisonment for attempted murder.